This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Somewhere in Orlando, Florida, amongst gargantuan amounts of lace and diapers and all kinds of baby toys, lies some football notes amongst Connor O'Gara's belongings. And he rejoins us right now from Saturday Down South. And it's been a little bit of time, Connor, and we appreciate the reason why. We haven't had you on for a little more than a month and a half or so. How's the family doing, and how are you doing?
You know, it's good to be back with you. Appreciate you asking. Family is good. It's one day at a time. You know, one day at a time. We've got a baby who has treated us very, very well, which we're grateful for. Healthy and in good shape, smiles a whole lot, which is really, really nice during those first few weeks when you're like, oh man, this is just not a sustainable lifestyle. But you know, very grateful that we're, you know, doing as well as we are. And you know, once August hits, it's kind of like, oh man, now we're gonna have to juggle these duties, you know, during the season. It's a little bit different, but all things considered, life could be a whole lot worse here. Yeah,
good. Well, it's exciting time. That's for sure. You know, for you personally and for your family. And now we got college football that's right around the corner. Albeit this is the last year of college football as we know it, of college sports as we know it. Things, you know, last Friday, like that was an amazing day to live through, you know, in real time. And now we're, you know, just sort of left for the remainder of the year to wonder about, you know, maybe the ACC and Florida State and all of that. But I think we'll look back to last Friday as you can point to the day that USC and UCLA left and joined the Big Ten, and when OU and Texas joined and everything. But as far as the number of schools that made the moves and the death of a league, a historic league, last Friday, seismic. And we'll be pointing to that day for decades.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're an SEC fan saying, what do I care about the Pac-12? It's a reminder that a power conference can die. And so much of this is based now on TV contracts. And, yeah, I mean, the SEC wasn't in the same position as the Pac-12, and it would take a series of mistakes for the SEC to ever be in that spot. And it's hard to foresee that. But at the same time, you see what happens when you make those missteps. And what the Pac-12 has really been guilty of, besides just having Larry Scott as commissioner for as long as it did, was going into this entire period of realignment saying, oh, you know what's going to save us is the Alliance. The Alliance, in theory, would have been great. The Alliance, in actuality, didn't have a written contract that prevented the Big Ten from going into the Pac-12 and getting USC and getting UCLA to start this entire movement that has been the death of the Pac-12. We're going to wait until Colorado is on board with Dion, and that's why we're not going to get this done in December, and then waiting to the point where, Colorado's actually up and left, and now you're really in a tough spot. It's sad, and it's a move that is 40 years in the making. This is not just the byproduct of one decision or 1 year. This is the byproduct of 40 years of having the NCAA not control TV rights and having individual conferences control these contracts. Fortunately for the SEC, it is in a really favorable spot right now. Others, like those who had to leave the Pac-12 or are in whatever remains of the Pac-12, not as fortunate.
If you're Arkansas, or if you're any of these, I guess you would say not top tier teams in the SEC, are you nervous that maybe there's not going to be an SEC in 10 years, or could you see a way where Alabama, LSU, Georgia join and you have like a super league, and then some of these smaller schools, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, they get left out?
I wouldn't bet on it, but you can't rule it out. And here's why you can't rule it out. Realignment, it has not been merit-based. It's not about wins and losses. It's trying to get compensated so that wins and losses don't matter as much. That's really what this comes down to. So if you're looking at it from the standpoint of, why would the best teams in the SEC do that? They need those lesser teams on their schedule. They need to be able to beat up on Vanderbilt. Ohio State needs to be able to beat up on Rutgers. Well, if you would have a different change in perspective with a super league, and you had this TV contract that was just insane, and all these people are working behind the scenes to make this happen, that league could function. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like, ESPN would sign up for a league in which 20 teams, the best 20 teams in college football are playing each other every single week. That TV contract would be insane. But the reality is college football is so much expectation-based, and with an 8-month offseason, I do wonder how that would look if you had teams who are used to winning 10, 11 games. All of a sudden it's like, oh, you're like 5-7 in a given year? Like, how do you evaluate that? That's the difference in college football. So I do think that that's something that could theoretically be on the table, though I'm not necessarily saying that that's
They tried that in Europe. If you look at some soccer with the Super Leagues, that was kind of brought out there a little bit. And, taking Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, taking Juventus, Real Madrid, Barcelona. But what you have if you do this is it's all exhibition games. It's just it's all standalone games. They don't mean as much. You're not playing for that title. You're not playing for that. It's a slippery slope where the games don't mean as much. It's kind of like the Live Golf Tour. It's just like the traveling circus is coming into town.
Exactly. I mean, and that would be the pushback. Is look, college football is what it is because it isn't just a regional sport, and a lot of the factors within it are regional, including the TV contracts. But so much of what makes college football unique is that any given Saturday, you can, in theory, see a team that is loaded with 3 stars decide, oh, today is our day, and we're going to strike gold, and we're going to, do what Purdue did to Ohio State in 2018. We're going to have these moments where Iowa just looks unconscious against a team loaded with 5 stars, and you can have these moments that would be taken away. It absolutely would be, and it would be essentially a professional sport at that point. I do think that it's a little bit more difficult with some of the political factors at play to get something like that off the ground, and especially with the ACC being locked into this grant of rights deal through 2036. It's kind of hard to foresee that happening anytime soon, but it's definitely one of those things that if you're a university president, you just can't put that away. You can't pretend that world doesn't exist. After what we just saw play out last week, you have to be head on a swivel, ready for anything.
Well, let's get into some football that we're going to watch this next year, which is still kind of the college football that we've become accustomed to in the last 2 years, I think, since the last major change in college sports. One of the things I know that you've pointed at on your column on Saturday Down South, 25 burning questions about the SEC in 2023, is about the Jimbo Fisher-Bobby Petrino marriage. Well, Petrino was up on the Aggies Media Day yesterday, and, I mean, he knew he was going to be asked about that. Here was his answer.
I've read or heard, or I've had people send me things about, you and Coach Fisher getting along, that's not really how it works, okay? Coach is the boss, all right? My job is to try to keep him happy and make sure that everything works, the way he wants it to work. I understand that more than probably anybody because of the number of years that I've been the head coach. But it's been a lot of fun, Coach is a ball coach, and the ability to go in the meeting room and watch video and listen to his philosophies and his techniques and fundamentals.
The feeling, Connor, is that the talent is there, that there is so much talent offensively still that there's a lot that Petrino can do with it as long as hubris doesn't get in the way. I watched that whole conference yesterday, and it looks to me like Bobby Petrino is in a really good place. I think he likes his job. I think he likes working for Jimbo Fisher. Admittedly, this is before they play a game. Buying or selling this relationship right now?
I'm going to buy it right now. Talk to me in mid-October. We all know in the SEC that second loss just hits a little bit differently, and especially when there are big contracts. And as you talk about hubris, that could definitely be factored in with 2 coaches who have not had to answer to anyone on the offensive side of the football in 20 years. So that relationship, they're saying the right – well, I shouldn't say they're saying the right thing. Jimbo Fisher spent an entire offseason trying to play it coy and trying not to say Bobby Petrino is our play caller, but instead we finally get some clarification on that. It only took until August. But I buy this relationship working because you listen to players talk about it and you kind of think about what A&M needs. A&M needed a presentation change. It needed, as Jordan Rodgers has called it throughout this offseason, a change in what a defense is seeing pre-snap. Because post-snap, a lot of things they were doing made sense. But pre-snap, they weren't getting anybody out of position. They weren't running any sort of tempo. They weren't doing anything that put pressure on the defense that made it difficult to defend. And as a result, A&M couldn't score points. And with the right scheme in place, there is the talent to be able to make that work. Their receiver room is one of the best in the SEC. It could be one of the best in all of college football if Evan Stewart pops like I think he could. Connor Wigman spells his first name incorrectly, but I do think he could end up being one of the better quarterbacks in this conference. And Bobby Petrino is kind of the guy that can make it go. And so I'm a believer that it could work. Obviously, ego, if that blows up, nobody's going to be surprised. But why I'm kind of buying the Aggies this year, and I have them finishing 9-3, finishing third in the West.
For the Razorbacks, you've had this great backfield, and you feel really, if Rocket gets hurt, you got a couple of guys that can really step in. And it's not like A.J. Green and Rashad Dubinion aren't going to get carries when Rocket starts, because they're going to spread things out here. The question is at receiver. The question is at tight end. And maybe the question also is the offense under Dan Enos. It feels like there'll be more tight ends involved in it, might be a little bit more balanced, and KJ hopefully won't be taking as many hits. As we stand right now, and it's 3 weeks before the season starts, Arkansas offensively better than last year or not so much?
If it stays healthy, better. I do think that. Even though I think the rushing is going to take some adjusting. It's just going to. Like, we're not going to see as many of those games from Rocket and KJ where it's very clear that an opposition just has no answer for them whatsoever. I don't know that the BYU games are going to be as plentiful, right? Like, that was clearly an advantage. They recognized that second half. I mean, that was a bloodbath. I don't know that type of domination exists, but being a little bit more consistent within the flow of the game and having more balance that way, can it be a more productive offense? Yeah, I think it will be. It has to stay healthy, though. Depth is the biggest question, and even though you feel good about your interior on that offensive line, obviously with Latham and Limmer back, it's two guys who should have a very good understanding of what they want to do offensively. You still have those questions on the outside. I mean, that's what this is all going to come down to. They would like a stud to be able to emerge at receiver. I thought Jaden Hazelwood last year was kind of what they needed in some of those key spots where you're just like, have a guy who, I don't care if he doesn't get great separation, but just a guy who can go up and make plays in traffic, and he's going to be really tough after the catch. They kind of need to find that guy, find those guys for this offense to be able to work. Otherwise, there could be some tough times, and we could be wondering, oh, man, why did they go through this offensive transformation? Why did they make this shift away from Kendall Briles to this more pass-heavy approach?
If I gave you South Carolina and Tennessee or Georgia, who are you taking in the East? Can anybody upset Georgia this year?
No. The question isn't about whether or not somebody can take Georgia's East title away. To me, like, at this point, I don't know. Like, even if you had filled out like your SEC ballot and you were one of those people that put like Andy or something like that, I'd be like, okay, you're just doing this as a joke. Anybody who doesn't pick Georgia as the team to beat in the East is just doing so as a joke. They've been that dominant. They've earned that right. It's more about who's going to be second. And I have South Carolina finishing second in the East as a team that has issues. So does Tennessee, though. So does Kentucky. I can point to Tennessee and having all this offensive turnover and what it's going to look like with a guy who's trying to hold down a starting job for the third time in Joe Milton. I can point to Kentucky in the last 5 games of their regular season, how difficult that schedule really looks down the stretch. And then I can point to South Carolina, who's had issues in the trenches. They're still just trying to finish better than 90th in the country, defending the run and running the football. And their RB1 is Kerryon Joyner, converted quarterback/receiver, which we don't knock converted quarterbacks in their position changes here, but you get what I'm saying. That's a difficult thing to do. So I think South Carolina has the ability to be able to overcome that with what special teams can do for that team, and the way that they have pulled off these upsets. I mean, they do so when you doubt them, and they do so late in the season. I think South Carolina benefits from that. I think they are the second-best team this year.
Preseason coaches poll came out, Connor. SEC has 4 of the top 10. Georgia, number 1. Bama, number 3. LSU's ranked 5th, and Tennessee at number 10. Those would wonder where Arkansas is. The Hogs are in the receiving votes category. They got 20 coaches' votes. That's 10th most in the SEC. The only SEC team that did not get a vote is Vanderbilt. Out of the 3 SEC teams in the top 5, and I'll just assume, since what you just said about Georgia, you believe they belong where they are. Does Alabama belong third? Does LSU belong fifth? Or should they be ranked a little lower?
No, I think Alabama at third is perfectly fine. And for those saying, oh, well, what about Ohio State? Why can't Ohio State be ranked better than that? Tell me when Ohio State has gotten on that stage and looked better than Alabama. And Alabama, everybody's saying like they've fallen off the face of the earth. It was the number 5 team in the country last year. I mean, we're talking about an 11-win team who still was very, very good, but obviously had its issues. And I have no problem if you want to put Bama at number 2 behind Georgia. And I don't think it's necessarily out of the question when those two teams, like, tell me when Ohio State, Michigan have gotten on the playoff stage and looked apart. Michigan, I pointed this out, like, Michigan has faced 7 bowl teams at Power 5 level in non-conference play or in a bowl game in the last 6 years. And they're 1-6 in those games. Like, get on that stage and beat a team who isn't Purdue in the Big Ten championship. And then tell me about your preseason ranking, all right? Like, that to me is just ridiculous that Michigan expects that when they've had kind of a messy offseason with their offensive coordinator situation, with Jim Harbaugh flirting with the NFL. So, no, I have no problem with Alabama being ranked that high. When you've gone to 9 of the last 14 national championships, 2 of the last 3, you're coming off of a top 5 season, which you've done 10 of the last 12 seasons. Yeah, Alabama's going to get the benefit of the doubt. That's why they're number 3.
BetOnline is your number 1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.